My name is Austin Scharf. I work at the Washington State Department of Commerce. I'm seeing a lot of familiar names here on the participants list, and I'm thankful for everyone's time today and for hopping on this call. This meeting is for kind of an introductory meeting to some reporting requirements that the legislature passed this past year, and the reporting template for that regarding utility heat moratorium law that went into effect this summer. And we at the Department of Commerce have been busy working on a reporting template for that, along with some other pieces. And so today it's my hope to share with you a draft template that we have, as well as get your feedback on how we have been proceeding with this work here at Commerce. My background, for those who don't know me, I came to the Washington State Department of Commerce about 6 years ago in a capacity where I was evaluating the potential costs and revenue impacts of legislation on local governments, working with our electric utilities. I didn't have the water portfolio, but to assess impacts of costs, and through that, I'm acutely aware of the time and staffing that it takes to fill out reporting pieces, and want to make that as streamlined as possible, while also meeting the legislature's statutory requirements and intent. And over the last few years, I've transitioned to working on different pieces of the energy portfolio, and now help my boss, Glenn Blackman, implement the Clean Energy Transformation Act, which is our state's 100% clean electricity law, and the reporting requirements there. And I see most of you from there in those forums as well. So the law that we're talking about today was agency request legislation, or was proposed by the Attorney General's office, and was passed by the state legislature around prohibiting the disconnections of low-income households, or of households, I shouldn't say low-income households, of households due to non-payment broadly. And there are some specific provisions that do not require, but that discuss payment plans and other aspects. And I'm not going to get into the weeds of the law today, but we're going to take a look at the reporting requirements. And for our electric utilities, reporting is required to the Department of Commerce for utilities that are over 25,000 customers. For water utilities, it's 2,500. And then the statute says that Commerce can request information from utilities that are smaller than those thresholds. Utilities are required under the law to report, if they disconnected anyone due to non-payment, and then subject to availability, Commerce can request additional information related to disconnections. That's kind of the framework of the statute. And so the way we've proceeded to work through this is to coordinate with the Attorney General's office, who worked extensively with utilities on the legislation, and to work with the Department of Health for the water utilities. I have been on a call with the Water Utility Association, and we'll be meeting with our PUD Association this week to discuss the template at a very, very high level. And this call today for our electric utilities is to walk through the template, get your questions, concerns, and then we will host a similar meeting with our water utilities at a yet to be determined date this month. So I need to coordinate with them. So that kind of gives you a perspective that we're still very much working on this and open to feedback, and that's why we're having today's workshop. Finally, part of this work, we started with an Excel template, which is a common reporting tool for a lot of our work that we do with the electric utilities here at the Energy Office. And we quickly abandoned that and thought, okay, this is not going to be a very workable tool for our utilities to implement the statute. Let us design something that is a little bit easier for them to track. And you know, when a heat alert comes out, they can go into a system and report the information that they need to report. It's all in one place. It's easy to use, that sort of thing. So we started developing that. Ran into some contract issues along the way with a consultant, back on track. And so where we stand today is developing a Excel tool for this first go around that will then be uploaded into a system. And then that will use a system going forward is the hope. And so want to talk a little bit about that with you all and see if that sounds like a good approach. But I'm going to stop there before I share kind of the Excel file and walk through what we're thinking in terms of reporting, and just see if you have any general questions for us, or for me, I should say, coming to this work. Yeah, this in the comment chat, I see Cynthia saying, is this for our power utilities? And yes, this is for our consumer-owned electric utilities. Primarily, you know, if you're a electric utility and provide water services as well, you know, you could use this one. There's but I think that the water utilities might want to have a separate workshop. It'll probably be the same content. I assume it would be. So if you're here today, feel free to stick around, but I will also be setting up a separate workshop because we did not advertise this to the broader water utility community. So at the very least, we need to make sure that we provide a time and a place for our water utility folks to come and attend. So there will be one for them as well. Is there, Tara, is there a link to the materials template information or posted following the meeting? I would be open to posting the template and sharing that with folks after the meeting. I think, you know, we are still kind of in that draft phase, so I feel like you know, we would definitely post it as this is a draft, if that would be helpful. And I'm open to folks you know, thinking that that would be helpful. I have no reason not to post it, aside from giving the false impression of what it is at this point. And it might be more helpful if we finished it up and then got your feedback, incorporated your feedback, and posted something. Let's see here. You guys like the chat, which is good. For utilities under 25, this is from Chelsea. Commerce requests info from them. Will the smaller utilities be required to use this template to provide that information? So my general thought is that Commerce will not be requesting information from the smaller utilities this year. I think, we would be in future years considering and likely to ask the small utilities to complete the information. It would probably be the same information, but that's just my thoughts at this time. And open to discussing that more. And I think that I think the template is pretty straightforward. I think if we do have a difficulty, it will be that, the law was in effect before the template came out. And so what information is, utilities still have an obligation to track all of this. So there should be some information on hand to help complete the template, but perhaps folks did not track all the information. We will see. And we can have a conversation about what it would take to report some of the information so that the legislature has a transparent picture. And some of it might end up being saved for a future reporting period. Or maybe it's not useful and we scrap it, but I think most of it is. And I've tried to keep it as streamlined as possible. There's fewer than right. Okay, we got the same question from Kelly with the statement, will a formal request be sent? I don't anticipate us asking anything this year from utilities. So this year from the small utilities under that 25,000 customer threshold. If we were to do so, my thought is it would be we would announce it in our regular bulletin. And depending on the type of folks who work on this, we might, I might flag it for the folks on the electric side that use, that report on energy assistance. I'm guessing it's kind of the same group of folks. And then promote it with the associations so that they can notify their members and get folks signed up or, on the list and notified that they need to be reporting to us. Cynthia has this thing, we'll post me materials. Yeah. I elected not to post the Excel before we could go through it so that folks could have it, know what we're looking at. For this year, do you mean 2024? This year, I mean, the law went into effect this past summer, so folks are reporting for this year, for 2023. So this past summer. The coming year would be and I'd say summer, but it's it's a statute that is a heat moratorium. So the assumption is that it's summer, but with the change in climate, it could be spring, fall, whenever those alerts go out. The assumption is that it isn't the winter time. There is a separate winter moratorium with a separate reporting framework. Okay. If we don't have any questions, let me pull up this framework or the template. Now when I do this, let's see if I can see my chat. All right, I pulled up my chat, so hopefully you guys are just seeing the Excel document. I'm going to hold your question, Trisha, in the chat, and if you still have it when we're through, we can come back to it. So this is the reporting form that we've developed in the Excel document, and the idea is that we would put this for the 2024 year. It would not be an Excel document. It would be a portal where you log in and complete it, and you would have somewhere ongoing where you could save it and have multiple utility folks access it and log and track as you go, rather than having this spreadsheet flying around. And then Commerce can just export that data out of the database. I think that's easiest for everyone, but we'll look at the data, see if that makes sense to folks. But for the purposes of this, we're also looking at this reporting year. You would have a general utility info page here where you would select, what type of utility you are, if you're electric, water, or both. You would have depending on your selection, you would have a predetermined drop down where you would select your utility name. You would enter the primary contact information for the staff person in charge of the report. And then we also have in here a request for the customer assistance phone number and customer assistance email. I think that's just helpful on our end. Sometimes we get inquiries from folks who find us on the web about where they can get assistance, and it would be nice to be able to direct them to the right place depending on their utility. So that's just kind of a nicety that we put there. So I think that's pretty straightforward. I'm not sure if there's any questions or thoughts on this. For the electric utilities, we are dealing with a pretty defined set of utilities that we know. For the water utilities, it's a much more complicated picture. And so we're going to work with the Water Association and everybody to try and identify those. You probably won't have like a drop down utility name for the water utilities. Everyone will just enter their names because we don't want to limit our data set. All right. So heat advisory dates is your next tab. And you can see we've kind of just put in some information here. You would put in the alert name, and then you would put the date the alert was issued. Then you would put the days that the alert's for. So like if the alert was put out on the 3rd of July, and it covered the dates July 4th through July 6th. You would put the 4th, you put 3rd here, it was issued the 4th, the date the alert kind of goes into effect. And then when that alert is over, you would put that date there, and then you would put in the zip code. Okay. So you're tracking your days here in the sheet. And then this is where most of the analysis comes in, if you will, most of the data entry. So once you have the heat alert in the other folder, what this will be is a drop down that selects the date, the time, all that information will be right here in here, and you can select that. And then what you would do in each row is for a household. I'll get to the comments here in a second. So think about these as being unique for each household. So there, and what triggers you to put something in this form is whether there's been a request for reconnection, which is part of the statute. It says, households that, seek reconnection, the utility must, make all good faith efforts, sort of thing, to get them reconnected to service. And so that triggers, if someone is to request reconnection, you fill this form out, sort of thing. So you would not be entering this for every single household, but for those who have requested reconnection. So you would have the heat alert that they're falling under. You'd have a household account number to identify, the distinct households. You would put a household service or utility service, should probably be here. So you would select whether or not, you are it's water or electric that they've been disconnected for and are seeking reconnection. You put in the zip code of the household, disconnection date. You put in a reason for disconnection, and that reason will probably be either my thought is it's a disconnection for non-payment or other reason. The reconnection request date, when the person was actually reconnected to service, where they did they have assistance, like a bill assistance prior to disconnection, and then what was the payment plan that did they receive a payment plan? What were the percent of income used to determine the payment plan? That's more to help utility. The statute has a 6% number in there. And so this number is more to help folks track that, to make sure they're complying with that part of the statute. And then there's no requirement for a percent of payment plan. So was there other assistance that was provided? And then if you did provide another form of assistance to households, you would put that in the description section. And so the idea is, folks would be getting this and completing this for 2023. And we did not put in here any sort of, what I would think of as, a lot of demographic information on the household. Lots of utilities, most don't have that information. They'd have to go to their community action agencies, and that sort of engagement would only happen, my understanding is, if there was a payment plan that was provided. So anyways, we tried to keep it fairly narrow here with the intent of the statute. But these are some categories that are most of them all fall under that part of the law that says, if available, Commerce can, or if applicable, Commerce can request additional information related to the disconnection piece. So I am open to feedback and questions, and we can walk through this again. And I have some questions for you all to help us inform this so that it's correct. But let me see what's in the chat first and see if we can take a look at this, see what folks are thinking. So for Trisha's question, if a district shuts off on a quarterly basis, do we still have to report monthly? So my initial thought on this question is that what triggers, so you have to, the statute is not asking for, it's not, the reporting's not triggered from the, so if you're disconnecting someone for non-payment, then that would need to show up. If it's a disconnection for another reason, it does not need to show up in the reporting unless someone has requested a reconnection of service when a heat advisory has been put out. And in that case, you would then be on this report detail tab, and you'd be filling out this information. Otherwise, if you disconnected somebody for some other reason other than non-payment, and they did not request to be reconnected in light of a heat advisory, you would not be filling this out. It's my thought. Steve, you raise your hand.
Hey, so yeah, I just want to make sure I'm clear on the point. So let's have a situation where there's individuals that have been shut off prior to the heat event, and they do not, and they are notified, when they are shut off, that this is an opportunity for them to have it turned back on during the heat event. But they do not request that. So in the event that there is no request for reconnection during the heat event, then we would not be reporting anything on this sheet.
That's been my thought. I can go back and look at the statute and bring that back to our group, but that's, the law is like, you can't disconnect somebody for non-payment when an advisory has been issued, right?
Right.
But if you had somebody who was disconnected prior, this wasn't developed for that scenario, maybe that is something that you guys have right on hand, and that could be easily entered and help clarify the situation for folks. That you do have customers that are disconnected and they simply haven't they've been given notice and they don't request this to be reconnected. That might be a very helpful piece of information, just to clarify that the utilities tracking all this and doing its due diligence, and for whatever reason the household didn't request to be reconnected. That might be a useful piece here. I don't know what you think of that, Steve.
I mean, for us, I probably less is more. But yeah, I just want to clarify kind of what you were thinking there. And then while I'm on household account number, we'll have to get back with our customer service folks to see if there's a problem with disclosing that. We're just concerned about personally identifiable information, but I'm not sure if that's an issue. Maybe some other folks on the call could opine.
Yeah, I would really welcome feedback on that. My initial thought, I had the same concern, and my thought was, well, could we just have them, it could be letters. This is household A, and the point here is, to track if we have folks who are consistently being disconnected and then reconnected, or how is this spread out across other households, that sort of thing. And so the household account number was suggested because it would be something that the utility could then go check its own books on easily. And it wouldn't require kind of setting up a cross tab between, if you had household A, how do we know when we go later on that we kept track of which one is household A, and keep that with the household account number, to make sure we're keeping distinct households there. And then my recollection is that household account numbers are reported through LIHEAP. But I don't know if there's a separate privacy barrier there compared to at least at this moment where it's being collected in an Excel document.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll check on that internally, but yeah, definitely interested if other folks on this call might have more direct experience with that too. So thank you.
I've seen, so this is Kristen, I've seen them alert by zone and county and asking for zip code on the template is the thought that we would list all zip codes in the county from the alert. That would be my thought. Um, um, I thought that might be an easier, more, granular look at the data. However, I also know that that might be, perhaps more burdensome, and I would have to check to see if, some of those alerts come at the zip code level or if they're all at the county. Zip code might be the most common denominator between all of them. In which case I'd want to do that. I wouldn't necessarily want to have a bunch of county data and then have a separate set of zip code data. I guess the zip codes could be put in with counties, but good question. Have to think about that more. Good thoughts. How do we go back to verify heat advisory dates to be sure we did not miss any? This is from Julie. I think, the key here, and I'd be interested in getting feedback on this too, is that the utilities were required to be making sure that they weren't doing disconnections during those heat advisory dates this past summer. And so that the utilities were tracking those heat advisories and have some sort of record on that. If not, you might have to do some patchwork to go back and look, would be my thought. Gene. Account numbers are not allowable under our data privacy policy at Jefferson. Well, thank you for flagging that for us, Gene. I think, my question would be, that seems to be in a contradiction to the LIHEAP piece. So we might want to take a look at that. And then my question would be for folks, how do we, if there is a recommendation for an alternative to a household account number that would keep the households distinct and identifiable. So Suzette, Stevens, seems if each row is for a single account, then the zip code would be for the specific home and not all in the system. That's correct, Suzette. I think when we were talking about heat advisory dates, it was this one here. When we were talking about the county, I'm guessing that's where your conversation is coming from, and here it is by zip code. So I think the comment was if you have heat alert AZ, you would need to, and it's for Pierce County. Is it the case that you would put in all the zip codes in Pierce County for these states? That sort of thing. Steve.
Yeah, so thinking about the account number and all that. So I could see where if we audited on the report that we would want to be able to show the auditor where we, got the data from within our system. But is it necessary for Commerce to see data down to the individual rather than us reporting, within the report period, this is how many times this has happened? Or even if you have individual customer instances that are reported, why is it important that you know if it's the same customer multiple times rather than just, knowing that during this reporting period, X number of customers on these dates had, were affected by this policy?
Yeah, good question. It is certainly a policy decision and not one that stems from statute. And the most immediate thing that comes to mind for me is making sure that, it's interesting and useful, I think, to know that if there's household A, B, and C, and household A is consistently either being disconnected or not for non-payment or for other reason, whether it's on a heat, assuming it's not on a heat advisory date, but then they come back and seek a reconnection service, the remedy for that situation probably, in thinking about it, is different than if it's one time A is having a problem and then B has one and then C has one, and then if A is constantly being counted over and over again for heat advisory, like, then we know it's one household and it's not like 50,000 households that are all having some sort of problem. So that would be my thought. So for instance, like Steve, let's say, and this reporting form isn't necessarily built for it, but if you had somebody who was disconnected for non-payment and did not seek reconnection multiple times, and if they're being reported multiple times, the number is going to be very inflated for how many folks are, if we can't distinguish that's one household, showing up multiple times across the course of spring to fall, the problem looks a lot different than if it's just one or two households that are struggling to make payment, if that makes sense. That's my thought.
Okay, yeah. So you're looking for kind of unique households then when you aggregate the data.
Yeah, and I think that's probably in everyone's best interest, so that the data doesn't come out and it's like, oh my gosh, look at all these, and in fact it's just maybe a handful of chronic cases.
Yeah, cool.
And figuring out how to do that, I think, is the thing that I don't have a good sense on, and am seeking input. Gene said a workaround for sharing of the account number could be to get a signed info release from the customer. That sounds like a lot of work. I could be wrong about that, but that to go track down the customer, if it was like during a percent of payment plan thing, if you were at that stage, that sounds like it would be good. But what if you never have any sort of direct conversation with the customer after disconnection? I guess it could be built into when you go disconnect the service, like that's part of the deal, but that's probably not going to help us this year, and that does sound difficult. Why could we not use the parcel number and the service address? From Trisha. My only assumption would be that's similar to the household account number, but I'm open to hearing what people think of that idea. Just some unique identifiers, what we're looking for, that folks can track easily. I think, my concern with the parcel number and service address would be that, we would really want to suddenly, I think that's even more granular in the sense that everybody can access a parcel number and, yeah, I think Heather's weighing in here. The same thought that I was having, that, the household account number is, I don't know if that can come out in a public disclosure request to a public entity or not. I assume they probably could at some point, or perhaps it's protected. But my thought is that folks would not have the household account number, and so they couldn't be tracked down to that level. It would just be like somewhere in the zip code, we had a disconnection for this unique household. And again, the household account number isn't to identify the household, it's to keep the some unique household level data to track it across time. Let's see here. Somebody had a bigger question. I got to roll up here. From Cynthia. Cynthia's question here is looking back at the legislation and require the total number of disconnections that occurred on each day for which the National Weather Service was issued. Can you talk more about this data and what the data will be used for? You would be tracking the total number of disconnections here in the sheet. And the statute, to me, reads to have these elements as part of the statute. There's obviously not the requirement that it be reported to Commerce. This falls under that broader provision. And the point here is to increase transparency around the different pieces that the statute is aiming at. So, for instance, understanding the reason for the disconnection, understanding when that person was reconnected, to understand, the piece of the legislation that requires, good faith effort to be made to reconnect those folks. And then I think there are some questions around the percent of payment plans that, if they're being offered at what percent. And then I think folks would want to, and maybe this is a false assumption, but my assumption is if, we're talking about percent of payment plans for those who are not offering percent of payment plans, but are offering other forms of assistance, to be able to show that in the reporting form, so that we have something that the legislature knows what is being done on the different elements in the reporting or in the statute, and is aware of this work. So that's why I put that in here. I would be interested in hearing any concerns or what seems here to be going to be the most difficult pieces for folks to collect, for this past 2023 year. If this is all fairly easy for folks to pull from their existing systems, what was being tracked, what wasn't being tracked, is helpful for me to know, so that we can make sure that this works for folks.
Austin, this is Steve again. Can you explain column I, the assistance prior to disconnect again?
This is whether they were receiving some sort of assistance prior to being disconnected or not, like a bill assistance or some other thing.
So kind of like a yes, no entry or
Yeah. Yes, no.
okay.
Yeah. Tricia says the percent of income used will be the most difficult. Yeah, and I don't know the position of the water district there, but that is really if you are offering a percent payment plan. What was that? What were the kind of terms of that? I think there's if folks don't know, they can put something in there. The statute is pretty clear about it. If you do offer a plan, that it be at that 6% mark. But I also feel for folks that the law goes into effect and there's a little bit of a learning curve there. Okay, let's see what else people have in here. Oops, sorry. Move the chat. Tracy says, I believe the zip codes will be the most difficult thing for us to track. And I think if that is zip codes for the heat alert, I'm open if folks are thinking, man, that county data is so much easier to do. That would be really helpful feedback. For me, I'd be open, at least for this initial go around, to look at county stuff rather than zip code if it's just so much more easier for folks. My assumption is that if you move the county, then you're going to have to take the customer stuff. And if you're not, if you're Snohomish County PUD, that's a pretty easy thing to do. For others, it might be more difficult. Anyways, I'd be open to hearing about that more and seeing what would be easier to reduce that load, at least the initial go around. And then what time frame for assistance prior to disconnect? I think the assistance prior to disconnect, there's my thought was not to stipulate any sort of time dimension to that. I think the only thing that would really be problematic with doing that would be like if a utility offered assistance the day before there was a disconnection, like that wouldn't really give an opportunity for the household to leverage that bill assistance and make good on their payments, on their reduced payments. But I don't think that's probably the practice. So I'm open to not like specifying that particular date. I'm not sure how helpful that would be. Perhaps if there's a lot of questions or concerns about that coming out of the reporting, then maybe we would be looking at that. But I don't, my understanding is that this is not, that would take more of a heavier lift for the utility to collect that data. So I'm not gonna, my thought was not to require us that, a look back on when that assistance was provided, just more as my understanding is that when you open the account, you can see whether they're hooked up, whether they're on a bill assistance program or not. Tim, are all columns required, or will blanks or not NAs be acceptable? My thought is that they'd all just be completed. We did have this percent of income used question, and for me, I'd have to spend more time thinking about that. I think most of the stuff is really crucial to the picture, and I don't think it would be of good service to anyone to leave a lot of it with NAs. But I also recognize that perhaps there was no tracking at all of this work, or some of it, and well, we need to know that, and but at the same time get some of this information. So my general thought is to think of this as being the no optional columns here. Fill the whole thing out. And if there's concern with that, let me know, because that's helpful for me, and we can try and address those questions or concerns before we finalize the reporting template. All right, Aaron from the city of Redmond. How do we get this Excel form, and where do we submit it? Great question. So this, I'm going to come back to your question, Eric, at the end of our workshop, which is coming soon. But let's see here. How would we report them? Not every zip code in our area is accessible for weather alerts. Pam, I'm gonna need I think more information on what accessible means, and so feel free to shoot me an email with what you're thinking.
Can I just go ahead and talk to you about it also?
Yeah, go for it.
So
yeah.
I know we're a smaller utility and we may not have to report, but we may have to. So we need to keep track of this information. But so our service area is from the Canadian border, a little town called Danville, 80 miles down into the Colville Indian Reservation, to a town named Keller. So neither one of those are accessible by zip code as far as weather alerts. So I can get Republic, which is in the middle of our service area, and I can get Wakanda. So there's two zip codes that actually will show up when I go out to the National Weather Service, and the others don't. I mean, we will assume if Republic has it, that probably the others would be, but by zip code, we don't actually have an alert or a warning.
Yeah, so for the purposes of what I'm hearing, for the purposes of reporting, you would need to probably make a blanket assumption that under that scenario, and I'd have to go back and check, make sure there's not some other way of doing it or some other alert or something. But assuming that's all accurate and true, which I think it will be since you've looked into it. My assumption would be that you would probably just default to reporting all the zip codes for Ferry County. And the question would come back to, is it easier at that point to have a drop down that's by county and not zip code? And so, yeah, that's one of the questions I have coming out of this, and welcome feedback on that. Further, I do think it's really helpful to get zip code level data when possible, but especially for the first reporting period, perhaps it's so much easier for folks to just do the county. And then I also think, I wonder, I wonder if on the heat advisory dates column, which is the column that I think we're really talking about it being burdensome to do the zip code, because you're going to have a zip code for the household. Whether it really matters whether this is a zip code or whether it's county, so long as the utility is reporting the zip code on here. I think the it might be helpful. The utility should probably be doing the work to identify those zip codes, but for some purposes, like you were saying, Pam, it might be able to do county. So perhaps it's a county here with either the option for folks to put the zip code information or just the county on this sheet. I'll have to do more thinking about that. Thanks for the feedback, and I welcome more of it. And
Austin, this is Brian Hess from Inland Power.
Hey,
I just want to confirm my understanding for this reporting is correct.
Yeah.
If our utility has the practice of not disconnecting during the heat advisory, would you anticipate that we wouldn't report anything then?
So I think there's two answers to this question. One is kind of the question that Steve raised earlier about, like, if you have somebody who is disconnected prior to the heat advisory, would they show up in this form? And
if they requested to be reconnected and we did that, then potentially they wouldn't be reported on this form either, correct?
no, that would be the case where they certainly would.
Okay.
That would be under like this sheet, and then you would fill out these different pieces. And so that's the other piece, is like, yes, it is the case that whether the utility has that policy or you're just following the statute as it is today, if there was somebody who was disconnected prior and they sought reconnection, you would be reporting under here for those households. But you would you don't have to go evaluate all the other cases.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
appreciate the clarification.
Yeah, and I think the question Steve raised is one that I think I need to spend more time thinking about, and whether the reporting form is easy to understand when it comes to that question, which I don't think it is at this point. Okay, I know we're 1 minute over, so I'm gonna just see if there's any questions here. Okay, I do anticipate giving additional guidance for folks for what it's worth. Steve had the county option that seems to have a fair amount of support, so I will definitely take that back out of this workshop along with some of the other points that we have. And there's obviously some work that I need to do to complete this form for folks so that it's ready to go. So what are our next steps? And this goes kind of Eric's question. And folks, and some folks would say, hey, could you post this online? I'd be happy to post this online, recognizing it is a draft. And if you start playing around with it, it's probably broken in a lot of places. So what you would be looking for is the row headers and thinking about whether those make sense or not. And there needs to be instructions with it. So I feel like it's problematic to put it on the webpage, but I'm happy to do it with that fair warning. I think folks, there's a few questions in here about what is required and what is not required, optional. I think the default is that it's all required unless unless we start seeing some things that are going to be difficult for folks to complete. In that case, please flag that for me. You should have my email. You found our webpage. It's austin.scharff, SCHARFF @commerce.wa.gov, or you can use our CEDA email. We're going to be working on finalizing it this month, and I know that's not ideal, especially since our, but that is where we are at. It takes some time to stand this stuff up. And so we will be working to finalize this. I am open for comments on this. I'm always open for comments and to discuss it through with folks. You know, I had suggested a like November 15th date, I think, for comments. And that would be ideal if you have thoughts on this coming out of the workshop. If you want to take it back, talk to some folks at your agency about it. And then come back and submit some, you know, comments. They don't need to be formal, in my opinion. They just, you know, shoot me your thoughts. And we'll work through it. And of course, you're invited to submit formal comments. Some folks like to have it in writing with a letterhead, and that's good if that's what they would like to submit. Some folks are asking for my email in the chat. Yeah. I can do that. And so what we will do is work to finalize this and then what we are also doing is working to build the reporting template, like the portal option, so that folks in the future have somewhere they can go in, add stuff, save stuff, so that it's easier. It would be the same fields, that sort of thing, but easier for folks to track, you know, throughout the summer or spring to fall. And we will, there's a question here, which is a good prompt for where I was going next, Cynthia. We'll be working to schedule a workshop for the water utilities, notify their association again of where we are in this process, and do that in the next month. And hopefully in early December, this would be my goal of posting this on our webpage. Which brings me to my final point. We are currently using the CETA Energy Assistance webpage, which is our 100% clean electricity law webpage that relates to low-income households. It's not an ideal situation. This is not related to that work. And so we are working to create a separate webpage for the heat moratorium work, at which point this stuff will be posted on that page. I will probably keep this on the energy assistance page this go around until we, you know, have that standing, and then the portal and everything else will be able to start being accessed through that page and other notifications. If you're not already signed up for our CETA bulletin, you can find that on the Commerce's Clean Energy Transformation Act web pages, and put in your email and sign up for announcements. Again, this work is not related to that, but it is our primary way of communicating with our electric utilities, at least. And I'll be working with the associations to help promote this work and get folks notified that this template is available and that they need to be reporting under the statute. So please, I am always open for comment as you digest the template. I'll post this draft that I walked through today. I think if folks got really into the weeds on it, which is welcome, you know, that would be helpful for me, but at the same time, we are still working to fine tune it. So don't be worried if it, for some reason, it doesn't seem to be cooperating right. You can let me know about that, and that would help us further refine it. So I am 7 minutes over into people's lunch. And so I'm going to let folks go. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns. I really welcome your feedback, and really appreciate folks' time today and their understanding of this process. I will post the link to the CETA webpage with the sign up information. If you're on a computer, it's typically on the right-hand side. And if you are on a mobile phone, it's on the bottom. says sign up. So please do, and we'll stay in touch. Thank you all.